Um, got a very frustrating story to talk about. It's from, well, every news site is covering it, but this particular article is from CNBC. Exxon Mobil misled the public on climate change, Harvard study finds. So, John Gress continues. ExxonMobil misled the public about climate change for years, as even its research echoed the growing scientific consensus that global warming is real and caused by human activity, he finds. The conclusion is based on a new study by two Harvard University researchers who used social science methods to compare what ExxonMobil said in nearly 200 scientific publications and internal communications on climate change with what they presented in 36 advertisements over 15 years. So everybody knows that the fossil fuel companies don't want the public to know about climate change. That's why people like the Koch brothers fund all of these right-wing think tanks, conservative think tanks, super PACs, donate to their political, people who will do them political favors, and they dig so deep and entrench themselves within the political system that all this legalized bribery is able to continue, and they're able to suppress knowledge like this from the public when their own researchers find that climate change is happening back from 1989. So, let's see. So this is from the researchers. We conclude that ExxonMobil contributed to advancing climate science by way of its scientists' academic publications, but promoted doubt about it in advertorials. Given this discrepancy, we conclude that ExxonMobil misled the public, the researchers wrote. So, let me just read the next part. So, Harvard researchers Jeffrey Supron and Naomi Oreskes presented their findings in a peer-reviewed article in the Journal of Environmental Research Letters. In a New York Times op-ed, they said that they were inspired to apply empirical analysis to documents after investigations by Inside Climate News and the Los Angeles Times put forward the notion that Exxon obscured what it had long knew about climate change. One key finding is that Exxon acknowledges that climate change is real and human-caused in 83% of peer-reviewed papers and 80% of internal documents. Yet 81% of editorial-style advertisements placed in the New York Times from 1989 to 2004 express doubt. In short, ExxonMobil contributed quietly to climate science and loudly to raising doubts about it, Supron and Oreskes said in the op-ed. So, let me give you what ExxonMobil had to say in defense of themselves. The study was paid for, written, and published by activists, leading a 5-year campaign against the company. It is inaccurate and preposterous, ExxonMobil said in a statement. The study claims that ExxonMobil advertorials in the New York Times cast doubt on climate science, which is the researchers' opinion and not supported by fact, the company added, noting its advertisements pointed out to potential risks associated with climate change, which, in all fairness, yes, 20% of them acknowledged climate change, but didn't particularly say that it was, something that we needed to act on and pursue green energy, yada, 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 because of course they're going to want to protect their business. And who can blame them for that? That's just protecting their business. But what we can blame them for is misleading the public for knowing about this and paying off all these politicians through these think tanks, like I said, and lobbying efforts. You name it, they're willing to spend the money to do it because this is, the world's biggest economic resource is oil. And ExxonMobil's a dirty company, man. I mean, Secretary of State right now is ExxonMobil's ex-CEO Rex Tillerson. And in fairness to him, he actually cut back on the climate science denial advertisements because he actually does believe that um, oil emissions and gas emissions, CO2, does attribute to global warming and in the longer term climate change. So I really like for as much as I thought I would hate Rex Tillerson, I don't like him, don't get me wrong, but I don't hate him nearly as much as anybody else in Trump's administration right now. He's been busting his ass overseas, doing diplomatic relations, even though I don't agree with our diplomatic relations with countries like Qatar, um, and all these. It's kind of funny, like, why, I don't know, are we allies with Qatar? Because I saw that we were doing exercises in Qatar, joint exercises, but that wouldn't make sense because Saudi Arabia hates Qatar. Oh, I'm getting off track anyways. So, here's another thing that the scientists found is they were warning the Exxon CEOs that sea levels could rise, the bleaching of coral reefs, which has happened. The Great Barrier Reef in Australia is almost completely dead now thanks to coral bleaching. Melting of the Antarctic ice sheet, which is happening right now, and dozens of other negative externalities predicted that came true. So, it's almost like Al Gore was right. It's people are like, well, climate change isn't real. It's the climate always changes. It's and we're like, no, that's weather. Climate is a long-term, process and following of weather patterns. Well, then it's not whatever. And then we prove that climate change is happening. Well, we don't know how much humans are contributing to climate change. So yeah, humans are participating in it, but we don't know how much. So is it even fair to, regulate coal and gas industries to cut back on emissions? Oh my God. So even though Rex Tillerson is worth $330 million as of 2017, he didn't lift the sanctions on Russia, at least yet. That would have allowed Exxon Mobil to do I believe, $3 trillion or something crazy like that, deal with Russia to build a pipeline through there. And that's pretty much the whole reason why we're in Syria as well, is because there's a pipeline that is being thought of to go through Syria to deliver oil to Russia. However, Israel wants the oil too. So now do you get why Russia and the US are so invested in Syria? It's because the US wants to divert the oil to our ally Israel, and we can make all that money. But if Russia gets it, then they have a huge, boost to their economy, which is almost entirely oil and coal and old, carbon emission causing fuels. So it's just like every fucking problem we have can be traced back to coal, fuel, gas, mostly oil, and it's just ridiculous, man. And we now know that Exxon Mobil, for at least 28 years, from the articles and scientific studies that were published since '89, we know that they've been lying to us. Or misleading us, because lying is not right. And there's a few people who have said that they're lying to us, but I mean, they intentionally misled everybody, and intentionally misleading people is, in my opinion, a form of fraud. There's actually 3 communities in California suing ExxonMobil because they're in danger of losing part of their community to sea level rise. And it's not just in America. This is happening everywhere around the world. So ExxonMobil, they're Fucksville. Because once the international community gets a load of this, and they're more likely than not gonna start filing their own lawsuits against Exxon. I mean, entire countries could sue Exxon Mobil, and that would be just wild. But one more thing I want to touch on. It's kind of related, kind of not. It's the externality aspect of this, because there's a lot of people right now on Facebook and politics altogether that are very free market. Free market is the best solution to everything, period. The government messes everything up, and there's really I'm talking mostly about like libertarians, anarcho-communists, anarcho capitalists, and other far right ideologies. They believe that the free market is the best solution to everything, but this is the perfect example of why you need government regulation, because not only does it break up monopolies and keep drinking water safe and food safe to eat, it also can stop this kind of shit from happening. It can say, all right guys, you can only put out X amount of emissions a year so our planet doesn't drown out Florida or Venice or there's already an island nation that has had to move. They're relocating all of their citizens because it's going to be underwater by like 2022 or something like that. It's going to be uninhabitable. So to say climate change isn't real is profoundly, willfully ignorant. And the externalities caused by it are a perfect example of why we need a mixed market economy where the government is able to regulate business and business is still able to run in a capitalistic sense, because you're not going to be able to ensure a truly free and fair market without regulation. It's just not possible. Or you'll get people like Rockefeller again, who are able to, become so rich because of one industry. And we're seeing this also with like Amazon merging with Whole Foods. The Federal Trade Commission kind of dropped the ball on that one, in my opinion, but that's for a whole nother video. And I'll shut the fuck up now. So if you enjoy what I do, like my Facebook page, my YouTube page, and yeah, that's it. I'll see all you guys later. Peace out.